Our next speaker, we've got Mandy Edwards. So Mandy is the CRUK Senior Research Nurse of Wales, and as part of her remit in her role, she works with research delivery teams across Wales, looking at various ways to increase recruitment and retention in cancer studies. And one of which that she will discuss today is about One Site Wales. So it is a central hub coordinating a One Site Wales response to the setting up of trials and running of trials as well. So let's welcome Mandy Edwards.
Thank you ever so much, Cherry.
Yeah, I'm just going to share your screen, Mandy.
Thank you. Because I'm in Wales and Cherry is in England, the Welsh internet does not like going across the border sometimes, so I had to send my slides to Cherry. Otherwise, you'd have to just put up with my face and me speaking, and no slides whatsoever. Thank you ever so much, Cherry, for inviting me to speak to you today. As Cherry said, I'm the Senior Research Nurse for Wales. So for those of us in Wales, I'd like to say Prynhawn da, which is good afternoon. Next slide, please, Cherry. Shades of Chris Whitty there. I've got a bit more hair, though. So basically, this is just a brief outline of what I'm hoping to speak through with you this afternoon. I need to add the codicil that this is a way of reaching an underserved population when looking at how the Welsh population lives in and around Wales. Next slide, please. So whilst I'm giving you the chance to just read the definition of what we mean by underserved, I'd just like to paint a picture for you. I'd like you to imagine a remote Welsh village. The local bus service has been cut. Where it used to come every hour, it's cut down to once a day. And in some parts of Wales, either there are now no buses at all, or there's a bus once or twice a week. Often the population is quite elderly, and the local doctor no longer makes home visits. He sits instead, or she, in a surgery 3 villages away. The school has closed down as there are not enough young families moving into the area. And the library, which used to have a mobile bus service, no longer runs due to cuts. There used to be a local community hospital, but this closed down because a newer, bigger hospital was built at the local largest town or city. The local shop barely makes enough to stay open. And the old pub closed and stands empty because there are now so many second homes that in the winter there are not enough people to keep it going. And here is a story of an underserved community where basic infrastructure and resources are scarce and hard to come by, all which impact the health and well-being and quality of life of that community. Next slide, please. So thinking about the example I have just given, you can maybe begin to understand about how one type of underserved community can evolve in a place. Geographical isolation and transport really compose massive challenges for people who may wish to travel to undertake research studies and be part of research studies, but it just isn't manageable. There are massive socio-economic factors at play, with increased levels of poverty, meaning affordability to travel to reach resources further away at big centres, are important things to consider when research might only be rolled out in 1 or 2 big centres that are a long way from where you live. This lack of interaction with healthcare services on a wider scale can mean there is a lack of knowledge and awareness, a kind of out of sight, out of mind feeling in these communities. And they could have, due to the lack of local GP or the library bus no longer coming around, limited access to information. There are still parts of Wales where it is incredibly difficult to get either a mobile signal or decent internet. Additionally, there's a literacy issue And English still, for a lot of people in the more rural parts of Wales, is not their first language. If I were to speak to you all now in Welsh, you probably would feel quite uncomfortable and not understand what I'm saying. So I speak to you in English. But if your first language is Welsh, how is it when you are approached about something, when you are feeling potentially very distressed because there's a potential cancer diagnosis, if you are spoken to in English and not your first language? So we have to consider here culturally sensitive approaches, the awareness of others of what is and what isn't acceptable to them. And the only way to know this is to reach out and to talk and to listen to them. Next slide, please. So why does this matter? Why should we be worried about reaching our underserved population? Why should research studies really consider the populations they are trying to treat? Warfarin is an excellent example. Warfarin, as I'm sure most of us know on this call, is a blood thinner, and the dosage is determined by various factors, which include a person's genetic makeup. This genetic makeup can vary between different ethnic groups, and this is due to specific genes, which affect how quickly or slowly an individual will break warfarin down. These genetic differences can lead to variations in optimal dosage requirements for different ethnicities. And research has clearly demonstrated that certain ethnic groups have different frequencies of this genetic variation of these types of genes. Therefore, understanding the potential impact of ethnicity on warfarin dosage can help healthcare providers make more informed decisions when prescribing the medication, to reduce the risk of adverse side effects. And of course, other factors are also taken into consideration, such as age, weight, other medications, comorbidities, and so on. So when we think about running research trials in cancer and we are looking to represent the population we are treating, we need to be really mindful that different people will have different reactions depending on their genetics. And we've known this for a while with warfarin. And of course, now we're getting more precision medicine with cancer, where we look at the genetic makeup of people and we are noticing trends. Next slide, please. So to give you an overview of Wales, we are broken down into 7 health boards and 1 trust, the Velindre Cancer Trust, which is based in Cardiff. We are a relatively small population of just over 3 million people. Next slide, please. But what you can see, if you look at this slide, which shows population density, is that there is a massive population density down in South East Wales, and the greater density up in North East Wales. But a majority of this massive geographical space is quite sparsely populated, so very rural communities. And as well, over 20% of our population is age 65 and older, and this is just increasing. We are getting fewer younger people being born and living in Wales, and our population is getting significantly older. So, next slide, please. I quite like this quote. So during the pandemic, when there were the urgent public healthcare studies, the way that we opened these studies quickly in Wales was we had one site leading who opened up the study and then subcontracted to all the other health boards in Wales. And it became evident very quickly that it was really, really important that we reached as much of the population as possible regarding COVID and its treatments, as it became evident that there were different populations who were affected more adversely than others. And there were different treatments, as came out of some of the studies, that we could offer people who were at a much higher risk of dying from COVID. And we decided that this was a good way to continue and utilize something positive that came out of quite a difficult time, as I think we'd all agree. Next slide, please. So now I'm just going to talk to you about Simplify. And this was a cancer study that came over from the States. You will have heard, I think, of the Galleria, the Grail trial. It's been in the news lately. And basically, this is a one-off blood test that is looking to be able to look for circulating tumour markers of 52 different cancers. So at the moment, our screening programmes across the whole of the UK, we have lung in England, but yet to be established in Wales, cervical cancer, bowel cancer, prostate cancer, breast cancer. That's 5. Imagine just a one-off blood test that would be so much easier and potentially so much more tolerable to people if this could be utilised to pick up 52 different types of cancer. So this company, Galleria, approached Oxford University, and it was a commercial study. So as with commercial studies, as many of you might be aware, generally they like to be open very, very quickly. They like to have very short recruitment windows, and they like to be able to get their recruitment done, dusted. They wanted to recruit 6,000 people across the whole of the UK who had been referred on the 2-week wait cancer pathway or had gone to a rapid diagnostic clinic. And they wanted a blood sample taken before they received a yes/no diagnosis for their cancer. This was quite a challenging thing to do if we thought about how this was going to work across the whole of Wales, which is why we decided to do under the one site Wales. And the reason we did this, Velindre Cancer Centre took the lead and subcontracted all the health boards. And this was still at a time when COVID was really very, very active. We were getting hotspots, and we were having to make sure urgent public health trials were taking precedence over other trials, but we still knew that this study was really important. And so what happened was we were able to open up many sites across Wales rather than just the 1 or 2 large centres, which is what can happen with a commercial study. And by treating Wales as just one massive site, it meant our rural underserved populations were being approached to take part in a research study in a way they never had been before. So introducing them to research. In the 3 months that this study was open for recruitment, out of the 6,000 people total that was asked for, Wales punched well above its weight, and we recruited 1,200 people. And this was thanks to the ability to be able to flex. So as a hotspot, and the hotspots tended to happen in our more densely populated areas, as they got under more pressure to do more COVID research, they would just pause recruitment. But it did mean that areas that weren't having a flare of hotspot would work to increase their recruitment where possible, to take up that flex, to make sure we reached the target that we had been asked to reach, which we did. And then we actually exceeded, because a lot of areas in England, I know, were having trouble because of the same reason, because of this hotspot of COVID and the other trials having to take precedence. From this, we then decided to look at using the One Site Wales continually for other studies. And I can't speak into the non-cancer studies, but I believe quite a few studies have now opened under this. And as well, we have just opened another study that's looking at a blood test called Colospect. And in this study, we are working with our specialist screening practitioners, and everybody who has had a positive fit test who is contacted by the specialist screening practitioners gets a phone call from them anyway, and then they ask them if they are interested in taking part in a research study that will take a blood test when they come in for their colonoscopies. And this is really important because it means everybody who is being referred in from a positive fit test is having the opportunity to speak about research, to talk about research. And also, there's no special trips having to be made. They will be seen when they come into hospital for their diagnostics. And this is a way, and it will be interesting to see how this uptakes, because this has only just happened, and I think we're just starting to recruit now, how this reaches more underserved people. Because, of course, what Simplify did was it opened up Wales to more rural engagement, but there are other underserved communities as well. And I think if anybody knows Lorraine, excuse me, I've forgotten her name, Lorraine Turner from Manchester. If anyone's heard her speak, she talks about the vital importance of reaching out and going to the underserved community and their populations to start to build a relationship with them. So giving voice and recognition to those who haven't really been heard from before. Next slide, please. So in this example of our research teams, they've started to be able to build bridges. We are working hard with GPs in Wales so that we are getting out earlier to people regarding research and research opportunities. And I think this is really important, because the more we talk and are aware about research, the more people will start to engage with us, and we need to start building this community of trust and being comfortable with the language of research. Next slide, please. So thank you, everyone. And any questions?
Thank you so much, Mandy. That's really, really well done, Todd. And I think we can only see exciting things for One Site Wales. And definitely there's a lot of strengths in it, including the rapid setup. But most importantly, it addresses a very specific and important issue, which is reaching the underserved population. So my question is related about the Lord O'Shaughnessy report, which was released in May. So it is a report for commercial clinical trials, and it relates about problems and recommendations. And one of the things that was mentioned among the problems is that clinical trial setup and approval processes in the UK are slow and bureaucratic. So with the One Site Wales, do you think that there's any scope for applicability to address this issue?
Certainly that report that came through does highlight there is an issue, and I would say there are still issues even with the One Site Wales process. It's about building trust, I think, even just between health boards across the whole of the country, so that everybody knows that the work that has been done, the foundations that have been laid, is as sturdy as everyone needs them to be, as it were. The hope is, because we've also and I think it's the same in England now, where there's a one costing template, and trying to get contracts, sort of off-the-shelf contracts that just need to be tweaked, make the whole thing quicker. So what tends to happen is that sponsor agreement can happen really quickly. And our learning with Oxford, when we've discussed it with Oxford, was that they realised that as sponsors, they need to have contracts and templates in place themselves, so that when a one site, and I believe Southampton do this, and I think there are probably other places in England that will sort of amalgamate different trusts around locally and just act as one site and then subcontract out to them. They've realised there's processes and things that they themselves can put in place to make it go quicker. So one of the things we are doing in Wales is we're talking to our industry partners quite deeply about how we can have things in place already. So when they approach and say, can we open this under the One Site Wales model, we've got everything ready to go. So I think it's a continual learning.
Okay. So we also have a really good question. So when you open a sub-site, do you send research nurses from the hub to train colleagues?
So the way it worked across Wales was we asked the CI to make like an SIV, the site initiation visit video, and they recorded one and it was sent out so the nurses could all look at the video in their own time. And then a couple of times across a few weeks, they had like an open session where the nurses could then come in and they could ask any questions of the CI and the sponsor team and get those answered about any queries they had about any of the processes. What we then did was every week the trial was running, we had meetings that were just open meetings that were a particular time every week, and health boards would attend and they'd discuss difficulties across the whole of Wales, and they'd discuss what worked well. And it was just an incredibly wonderfully collaborative thing that brought the whole of Wales together, and we could see how we could work as a union, as a whole, and it was really quite invigorating.
So any more questions from the group? Okay, right, so I don't think there's anything. So thank you so much, Mandy, and I really appreciate your time in giving us a talk on the One Sight Wales, and I really hope that One Sight Wales can expand and, you know, reach more underserved population.
Thank you.